Okay. Okay, where is everybody else?
Hello,
Hi,
how we doing?
we're doing well.
Good. Let me see why my headset is not working.
Don't know where our picture is. It got lost.
Hold on a second.
Let me try something. I'm trying something. Oh, look, it doesn't give us, what a shame. All right, I don't know why there's no picture.
Okay, I'm looking for, give me a minute, folks. I gotta find my other headset.
My picture didn't come up, but it's okay. I don't think it was- you know.
No.
It's talking about no picture.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there, Rabbi.
I want to be on in 1 second.
My picture isn't showing.
I have no idea. Look, they don't have it either.
Hmm.
Can I touch this?
Yes.
See something? Oh, you can't see it anyway. Oh, wait.
There it is.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I can see some of you have your screens off. So if you can turn on your screens, that'll be great.
How do you do that?
I don't know what I did.
Bennett, are you on a computer or on your phone?
Computer.
Okay, so if you go down to the bottom left corner, you should have a microphone that says mute or unmute and a video, stop video thing to click. You see that?
No. Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah, there it is. I got it.
So bottom left corner, you have mute and unmute. You just muted yourself, Bennett. So you put yourself on, okay, you're good. And see, can you see the stop video or start video? Start video, stop video. I just did it. All right, that's the best I can do. One more thing.
Oh, my picture. My
That?
picture.
Got it.
All right, hi Bennett. Hello. So Susan, you lost your picture?
I lost my picture. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, Rabbi. I'll try. May I try while you're speaking?
Okay, I can see you though, but that's okay.
Oh, you can see me?
No, I can see that you are there, but I can't see you.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, everyone. So we're back in action here for our class, and I'm excited to be able to be learning with you again. I hope everybody's feeling okay. I see Barry, you're wearing a mask. Is that a bad sign about your household? Steph, are you okay over there?
Oh, sorry. I'm just in CVS trying to get medicine. That's all.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right, so we're gonna jump right into things. Our goal is to be finished by 8:25, so we can shift from here over to the Yom HaShoah program that's going to follow. Okay, and we have, as you know, wow, we have our youngest member there. Oh wait, he just left. David, is he staying on? Okay. We are going to go back into our study of Sefer Bamidbar, and that's going to be by looking at the following text. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Let me find the right spot here. Hold on.
What chapter? Where are we?
Hold on a moment. I'll show you everything. Let me actually see what happened. Hold on a second.
For those of us on a phone, we
Those
have
of you on
a
a phone. Yeah. We will be looking at chapter 15, okay?
What?
Chapter 15, and this is, hold on. People who are making extra sounds, I might ask you to mute yourselves. Let me find the right spot here. Here we go. Okay, we're sharing the screen. Everyone see the screen now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So our topic is this. The last thing we studied together was the story of the spies and the decree of God that the Israelites would not be allowed into the desert, not allowed into Israel. And hold on a second, I'm going to have to do one thing because I think if you can, folks, if you can put yourselves on mute until you have a comment to make, that would be helpful. Okay. So, and then we studied the story of the Ma'apilim. That was the last piece of the puzzle. The individuals who, we don't know exactly how many they were, who insisted after God had said, that's it, you're not going into Israel, 40 years in the wilderness. And they said, no, we're going. And they go up the mountain, as we're told, between the mountain range, and they are at least roundly defeated by enemy forces. We don't know about how many deaths there are, but it's not a good thing, right? It's a terrible moment. Following that's end of chapter 14. Chapter 15 begins. Don't get dizzy, everybody. So that's the end of chapter 14 right here. Vayered hamalaki v'knim hayoshev bahar hahu vayakum vayaktum ad hachrama. Those Amalekites and Canaanites who lived in the mountain range, they came down and they struck them, and they dealt them a shattering blow at Hormah. That's what we're told. That's where we left off. Chapter 15 begins with the following discussion. Vaydaber Adonai Moshe lemor daber b'nei Yisrael v'marta alehem ki tavo el eretz moshvotechem asher noten lachem v'asitim ishel ola uzevach lefalei neder b'nedava b'modechem lasot rech nichoch Adonai min habakar min hatzon. We start talking about different types of sacrifices and libations, right? Especially libations described here in Pasuk Hey. That's what follows there. All these rules of libations, and after the rules of libations. They talk about everyone having the same sets of rules, both you and the stranger amongst you. Verse 17 begins another topic, and this is the mitzvah of Reshit Arusotechem Chala Tarimu Truma Kitrumat Goren Kain Tarimu Ota. As the first yield of your baking, you shall set aside a loaf as a gift. Shall set it aside as a gift, like the gift from the threshing floor. This is the mitzvah of challah, right there. The word challah. Anybody here bake?
No.
Have a few bakers here. I don't know. So you might be familiar with the practice that we have of if you're baking in any large quantities of bread, like you have to set aside challah. These days, what we do is really a throwaway, but in principle, it was meant to be given as a gift, like you would give other gifts from your first grains and the like. That's the mitzvah of challah, okay? And so that's what's described here. So we left a decree from going about the damnation in the desert and people who try to defy it to these strange sets of rules, okay? And then the last discussion here has to do with different types of situations when people might sin, transgress, especially idolatry, and what would happen in terms of the community doing so. That is, and then the discussion here in verse 30, in Pasuk Lamed, if someone does something with flagrantly and defiantly, what should happen to that person? Min hazrach, min ager, wherever you are, that is considered to be an act of reviling God, and that person is cut off from his people. He has spurned the word of God and denied his mitzvot. The Torah says that soul should be cut off for its sin. So we have this chapter describing a few strange sets of rules, okay? And then we return to a bit of a narrative story. That's where I want us to pick up, although we'll have to put it back in the context. So here we find ourselves, okay, everyone? Verse 32. Vayihiyu b'nei Yisrael b'midbar, and the children of Israel were in the wilderness. Vayimtzeu ish mikoshesh eitzim b'yom haShabbat. They found a man, mikoshesh eitzim, he is doing something. We'll see exactly what it means here. They translate as gathering wood on Shabbos. Okay, gathering wood, doing something with eitzim, with wood on Shabbos. Quick vote here. Who thinks that we're supposed to be gathering wood on the Sabbath? Anybody?
Yeah.
No. The answer is you're not allowed. You're not permitted to do whatever this is. It's something minimally. Wood is muktzah, but that's a rabbinic rule that says you can't move it around because it has no purpose on Shabbos. And he's doing something that has no purpose, but presumably also forbidden. Okay, so they find him. Vayakrivu oto hamotzim oto mikoshesh eitzim, and the people who found him gathering wood, right? They brought him El Moshe ve'el Aharon ve'el Kol Ha'ida. They brought him to Moshe and Aaron and the whole community. That's strange. If you find somebody doing a transgression, who should you bring him to? You can unmute yourselves, folks, as long as you're not making lots of noise in the background. I'd love to hear some right. If you find someone breaking the law, what should you do with him? Where should he be brought?
To the judges.
To the judges, right? Okay, and so Moshe is a fair person. Aaron, I don't know exactly. And all the Eidah, that's a strange thing. Did anybody watch the mayor's press conference yesterday?
No.
No? I happened to have turned it on because I really wanted to watch Meet the Press, but the local NBC News folks had actually felt the mayor was more important than Meet the Press. Okay, fine. So at the end of the news conference, thank God it wasn't national. He was asking, taking questions, and the last question that was posed to him was from a person who was, I guess, some from a Jewish agency of some kind, and he said, "Why aren't the police shutting down the minyanim that are still meeting?"
Oh.
And there were still minyanim, and he said, "Okay, what are you talking about?" And he said, "I called in a report on Friday against the shul in Borough Park, and then the mayor said to him, stay on the line with me. Where is this place? Tell me the address." Okay. And so thank God it wasn't national news, but in front of tens of thousands of local New Yorkers, at least, this person ratted out, as they should be ratted out. And please understand me, ratted out this minyan. He gave the specific address in Borough Park of this minyan, which was still meeting. Okay. And the mayor said, "I'm going to have the police there, and they're going to stop these folks." And I'm saying to myself, the mayor should have said, "Stay on the line. I'm going to have my guy talk to you," right? But now, I'm afraid of anti-Semitism, right? That there are going to be people who are going to firebomb this address, on the morrow, because he announced the shul that was breaking the rules. Okay, so I find this to be very troubling. That they bring the Mikoshesh Eitzim, not just to Moshe, but in front of the whole Eidah, in front of the whole assembly, because he transgressed the Shabbos. And then what happens? Vayanichu oto b'mishmar, and they placed him in the mishmar, which is the lockup, in prison. Kilo forash ma yeasa lo, because it wasn't explicitly told to them what should be done with him. And then, Vayomer Adonai Moshe Mot Yumad Ha'ish, God said to Moshe, the person shall surely die. Ragomo to ba'avonim kol ha'ida michutz lamachaneh. He should be pelted with stones by all the people outside the camp. This is pretty horrifying. I know it's a horrifying thing to hear, but the transgression of the Sabbath in the purest scenario is a punishable by death, and this is the death penalty. And they did it by Yetziu Oto Kol Ha'ida Michutz Lamachaneh. The whole assembly brought him outside the camp. By Yirgimu Oto Bavanim by Yamot, and they pelted him with stones, and he died. Kasher Tiva Adonai Moshe had commanded. That is a very short narrative story, okay? And I want us to try to understand what it's about. What's it doing here? What its message is, right? So let's just start with the first question, which is, where is this event happening? Where is this event happening?
In the wilderness.
In the wilderness. Good. Is that a surprising thing for the Torah to tell you? Or is it unsurprising? Or is it meaningless?
No, it's very meaningful because if we're talking about this gentleman that desecrated Shabbos, they're making a public fine for the most part. Unfortunately, he's losing his life, but they're trying to set a standard. They're trying to set up fear. They're trying to set up a message that you don't transgress Shabbos.
Okay. So this is about, not, the point is very real, right? But in the moment, I'm trying to understand why we need to know where this is happening. Is it relevant for the Torah to tell us that that it's in the midbar? But I think you're correct. I mean, it's a serious matter. Shabbos is serious, and once people start breaking the Sabbath, so then one person does something in a moment, in a week, and 2 Shabbosos from there, you're going to have everything unraveling. So you kind of have to keep the order around the Shabbos observance. That's kind of what the Torah is set up here, even though it's pretty hard.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask
Yes.
a question? They came upon a man in the wilderness. Are we assuming that this man was an Israelite, or was he?
Yes, good point, right? If he were a Gentile, we can't imagine that he would be punished for not keeping the Sabbath. We actually have a rule that says that Gentiles are not permitted to keep the Sabbath along with us. Certainly not idolaters. They wouldn't be allowed to. This is something which is for the Israelite people and not people who are foreign to us. So, but there's something strange about they found the man, right? How was he hiding? Was he doing? Your guess would be that if they found him and he weren't a stranger, then what does finding him mean about the way he was doing this?
He was sneaking out.
He was sneaking, right? He was doing something that was somewhat in stealth, and they caught him. They caught him doing it, and they dragged him in. And it has something to do with trees. And what's so interesting is, like, you're in a midbar, and there are 8 sim. So, if you're in a midbar, we don't imagine there are a lot of 8 sim in a midbar. A midbar is a wilderness. 8 sim are, branches. What kind of branches do you have?
In an oasis.
An oasis. Okay. I guess we have to remind ourselves that a Lawrence of Arabia type of desert, those Saharan deserts are not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the wilderness of Sinai, what we call Sinai area. And it doesn't necessarily be barren of everything. You might have branches there, might have bushes there, and that could be, okay? So that's
No.
what we have. So let's take a look at how we approach this. I'm going to put mute for a moment, okay? We're gonna undo this text, and we're going to look at the a source sheet that we're going to have, and we'll come back to the text again. Okay, the text is called Sticks on Shabbos. That's what I call the text. Pretty fancy title. I'm going to try to get rid of my picture of you again. I got you in the way. Did you see the picture of all of you on the screen here that I have?
No.
No, that's what's fascinating. It's a very cool technology. Okay. So here we have Mikoshe Seitzin. Let's first let's take a look at this text. I have to apologize. I'm gonna unmute Susan. I muted her before. Oh, she's still on the phone. I saw her. Okay. Okay. So Mikoshe Seitzin. This is taken from the text of Chizkuni, who tells us what does it mean Mikoshe Seitzin. Anybody want to read for us the opinions in the Chizkuni and the Abravanel? I've highlighted them, okay?
I can read it. One opinion says that he carried the sticks for a distance of 4 cubits within the public domain.
Okay.
Another says that he broke off the sticks. Another says that he made them into bundles. He cut large branches into smaller ones.
Okay, so those are 4 opinions about what he did. There's something to do with gathering, breaking them, cutting them down. So these are prohibitions. I mean, not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to break off sticks and make use of them. Okay, now we know what he did. It's fascinating that we can imagine this person's going to be subject to the penalty that he meets, but that's the Torah rule that's put out for us. So I want to ask this question, which is, when did this event happen? When did this event happen? We're told where. What's the answer to where?
Wilderness.
Wilderness of Sinai.
The wilderness. It just says the wilderness, okay? And I mentioned Sinai because we happen in modern usage refer to the entire peninsula as the wilderness of Sinai. It happens that there are lots of different areas in that peninsula. Only one is called the wilderness of Sinai. Others are called other wildernesses, okay? So the Torah actually leaves things somewhat vague by telling us that they're in the wilderness. Okay, we'll come back to what it might be getting across, but it could be that this is not happening at this point in time at all. So let's take a look at the Ibn Ezra. You see the text here of the Ibn Ezra? What does he say? Who wants to read for us?
According to my thinking, this is the wilderness of Sinai.
Okay, the wilderness of Sinai. So you mentioned, Wendy said Sinai. Good. So the wilderness of Sinai. Have they been recently in the wilderness of Sinai? Let's take a look at the text in the Torah here. Back to our text for a moment. The Chumash text. Here we are. So this is right, but chapter 15. We have to go back to chapter 13. Let's see that. Let's go back actually to chapter 12, the end. Oh, we'll say with 13. Okay. So the last description of where they have been before Shalach began tells us, Bachar nasu ha'am mechatzerot, vayachanu b'midbar Paran. They're in the wilderness of Paran. And then the whole story of sending spies happens, because where would this be, the Midbar Paran, in terms of placement in that big vast space that we call the Midbar? If you're sending spies into Israel, where is it? Let's remind ourselves. If you're sending spies, Israel's to the north, right? So where are you in the big vast space called the peninsula? Are you in the south, middle, north?
South.
So, if you're sending into Israel from the wilderness, you have to be in the north, right?
Lord.
You have to be in the north because you're leaving the wilderness and entering Israel. And then and that's what we're told at the end of the story when the spies, after the whole decree that happens, the spies go in and out, and then you have this group of people. Pardon me for spinning us around here. The folks who insist on going up go up the mountain. They're there. They go up the mountain. So they're not in Sinai. Not in what's referred to as Sinai is much more central to that peninsula, even south. So they're not in the Sinai Midbar. They're in Midbar Paran. So according to the Ibn Ezra, this story is not happening now. This is a story that's happened that took place earlier, and that is an intriguing description about how early could it be? Because so if you're in the Midbar Sinai, so that makes sense because where do they learn about Shabbos?
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai learn about Shabbos. True. But in fact, and now I'm going back and forth on all these screen shares. I'm sorry for going back and forth. But the fact is, they learn about Shabbos even earlier than that. So this is my other text here. Here we go. Too many things in the way. If you go over here, you go. Chapter 16 of Exodus tells the story about the manna, right? And Moshe says, in the story of the manna, Shabbat Kodesh Ladonai Machar. Tomorrow, but on Friday they came and they gathered. They gathered 2 portions of manna on Friday, and they were told it was never supposed to be that amount, but they gathered 2 portions. And Moshe says, "Oh, I meant to tell you, this is what God said." That Shabbat Kodesh Ladonai Machar. Tomorrow is a great Sabbath for God. You can bake and you can cook it with this stuff. Even though generally you're not allowed to leave the manna over, that on Friday you can leave over to the next day. Anybody know what the custom we have is based on this discussion of 2 portions of manna on Friday? Anybody know what our
Lechem Mishnah?
Correct. So we have Lechem Mishnah. We always make sure at our Shabbos tables to have 2 loaves of bread instead of just 1 to recall that they had double portion on Friday. Okay? Moshe already teaches them about Shabbos by the time you're in the story of the manna. In fact, I'm going up now into the previous chapter. They are thirsting for water in the previous chapter, in the previous section. And the Torah says they came to this place called Marah, bitterness, and the water was very bitter. They complained to Moshe. As a God, he throws a branch into the water, and the water is sweetened. And there's Sham Sam Lo Chok Umishpat, the Sham Nisahu. There, Moshe gave them a few statutes and laws. What statutes and laws? So that is a teaching of Rashi. Hold on, so I'm going back and forth here with the screens. So Rashi there said, who wants to read that Rashi I just highlighted? We have a reader? Eleanor, how about you? Can you see it?
Where would he say he made for them a statute and an ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. At Marah, he gave them a few sections of the Torah in order that they might engage in the study thereof. The sections containing the command regarding the Sabbath, the red heifer, and the administration of justice.
So already very, very early in the biblical story out of Egypt, they crossed the Red Sea, and then right after that, you're just in the first month out of Egypt, they already have been taught about Shabbos, and a week or so later, they certainly learn about Shabbos around the story of the man. Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Did we deal with the justice of killing the guy who was cutting the wood on Shabbos?
No, we're not dealing with that right now. We're gonna we kind of have to at some point we have to just accept it. But it's a pretty we talked off by our first 10 minutes of our class. We try to note how painful it was for us to imagine such a punishment. Right? It's something which seems very foreign to us. Although here the concern would seem to be that if one person breaks the Sabbath, then the entire system will fall apart because next week you'll have 1,000 people breaking the Sabbath. So there might be a need for some harsh punishment here. Not that I'm the one who's going to institute it, okay? But it happens. The Torah law says that if you transgress the Sabbath, it is punishable by death.
I see.
So we just never heard it. We just never got to witness it until this story. Now, we'll come back to it though. So here is the Midrash. The Midrash on our text says indeed something that they once we met this Ibn Ezra who said go back to Sinai, and now we've pulled ourselves all the way back to the very beginning of their time out of Egypt, a few weeks out. Let's read the Sifrei, the Midrash that appears here. Who's our reader?
I'll read.
Go ahead, Greg.
And the children of Israel were in the desert. Scripture here speaks in disparagement of Israel, that they had observed only the first Shabbat when they desecrated the second. And they found a man mukoshesh wood on Shabbat.
So according to the Midrash, when they read the Torah text that says, and the Israelites were in the wilderness and they found a man, how are they reading that phrase, and the Israelites were in the wilderness? Let's read it again. Scripture speaks in disparagement of Israel that they had observed only the first Sabbath when they desecrated the second.
Wilderness can have more than one meaning. It's not necessarily a physical wilderness. It's a spiritual wilderness.
Oh, that's very. I want you to hold on to the idea of a spiritual wilderness for our largest discussion. But this Midrash is pretty clear that it's understanding it to mean the wilderness that they find themselves. But it is actually only the second week, says the Midrash, after God had given them the rules of Shabbos. The second week after they've got Shabbos, and they're already cheating. That's how the Midrash reads it. Now, I would have said, or you might have said, the second week,
he doesn't understand it.
They're starting to learn the rules, right? So, you would have said, okay, everybody, good try. Next week we'll try again, and we'll have a few weeks, and then we'll start talking about, responsibility for transgression. But these are all practice times. On the other hand, if you're in the wilderness, how hard is it to keep Shabbos? I mean, I don't know. How hard is it to keep Shabbos? Don't make a fire and don't cook. Right? That's pretty. And what else are you going to do?
It's like being in quarantine.
How hard is it to keep Shabbos when you're stuck in the wilderness, right? So there's some sense that there is this shouldn't have happened. You don't need a lot of time to learn this. Of course, you say bad habits, whatever you're going to say. So so at least the Midrash here wants to read it that gosh darn it, we couldn't even keep it with second Shabbos. And there is actually a very beautiful teaching actually have building on this, which says if only Israel had kept 2 Shabboses in a row, then the Messiah would have come.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept the first one. The first Shabbos they did really well, okay? But they couldn't. But they couldn't do it. And it's sort of this recognition that we are just not yet ready for what needs to happen. But somehow they look back at this, and now Eleanor asked the question of the justice of it all. If you have almost a sense of this potential that if everyone keeps Shabbos, please, no one do this, right? And one person screws it up for everybody, right? So there's like, this is like intense, the implications of it. But that midrash, of course, the midrash, and that's a rabbinic teaching that's very beautiful. I don't know if anybody would have thought that they were yet waiting for Messiah. They thought they were actually waiting to go into Israel and didn't need a Messiah, right? Because that's the real truth. The message really was that if they kept to Shabbatot, maybe they would have just kept on being worthy, and redemption was happening on its own. But that's this read. Now, if you now step back to this and you say, oh, wait a minute, that's actually not so far-fetched for the Midrash to, right? Because again, what the Midrash is doing is this. Here's a story in the middle of the book of Bamidbar, and the Midrash is saying, when did it happen?
Day before.
It happened a month out of Egypt, right? The second Shabbos they had, and they only learned about Shabbos, okay, it's, around a month out, so it's 5 weeks out of Egypt. That's it. So it's really early on. So you say, come on, what does that mean? And they read the verse then to mean, right? And the Israelites were in the wilderness, meaning they were just starting off in the wilderness. That's how they're reading it. Now, you'll say, prove that that's what's going on. If you look at this text, here we go. Right? If you go back to what happened here, when Moshe starts talking about, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Sorry. Here. This one. Moshe gives them the manna. Here. They get the manna, And here, a second. Here we go. And it was Vayihi Bayom Hashvi'i. Right. So Moshe said, it's really great. Friday you get 2 portions, and on Shabbos you prepare it and you'll have it all for Shabbos. Vayihi Bayom Hashvi'i Yatzu Min Ha'am Lilkot V'lo Matzau. And it was on the 7th day on Shabbos, people went out to harvest, to gather what this is, right? What were they going out to gather?
Manna.
Right? Manna. V'lo matzah, and they didn't find any. Now, so what does that mean? If they had found manna and gathered it on Shabbos, what would they have been guilty of?
Breaking the Sabbath.
Breaking the Sabbath, because you would have carried the stuff in, whatever it's going to be, right? Luckily, lo matzo, they didn't find any because God doesn't bring manna on Shabbos, okay? So, again, God's very angry at them. How long will you refuse to keep my mitzvot and my Torah, right? Right? See that God gave you Shabbos. That's why he gave you 2 portions on Friday. Everyone should stay home. No one should go out of their area on Shabbos. The people, properly rested and were inactive on the 7th day. Okay? So the Midrash Sifrei has done is what? The story that we read in Bamidbar kind of gets layered over here to tell you, good, finally, yes, people got it. Everyone is practicing sheltering at home on Shabbos, right? And one schnook who sneaked out. So first you had a bunch of people sneaking out, and then and they were already said, folks, look, get out of here. There's nothing to gather. And then apparently he still was going out, not to gather man, but to gather sticks. So here's a guy who, after God has just made it very clear, folks, gosh darn it, right? Why can't you see? I've given you Shabbos. I want you to have Shabbos. And then he still does it. So that's a big deal. It's not a small deal. It's a big deal. And that's the context in which the story finds itself. Okay? Now, let's go back to our other text. It's 8:17. We have a few more minutes, and this will continue, God willing, next week. Yeah. So why is the story here? If this event actually took place way back in in Shemot times. Why is it appearing here? You convince me, let's say, right, that the storyline is an earlier story, but then you always have the question that you must ask, which is, then why place it out of order, right? That's always your, but you convincingly showed me it's not in the right place, and why is it where it is? So you have two answers. One is, oh, the Torah is sloppy. We don't like that answer, right? The other is that, well, there's some contextual purpose that it has.
Rabbi, can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
So this man went out when he shouldn't have, but
Yeah.
why were the other people out when they should have been home as well? So they went out and they found him, but they should have been in their home.
Shvu, right, correct. The Torah said everyone just stay where you are on Shabbos. So, so good. So read me this midrash I'm now highlighting. Read that phrase, that midrash. Can you see it?
Wait, let me see if I can put
Now
my
we got to put on the glasses.
Okay. And they found a man pulling up wood. We are hereby appraised that Moses appointed watchers to this end, and they found him pulling up wood. These were the watchers? These were allowed to be out?
They're spies.
Well, spies is the wrong word, but they are Shabbos police, right?
They're
Shabbos police. Moshe has appointed Shabbos police to ensure that people are not transgressing Shabbos, and they find him. The Midrash says it's not just any old people; it's a people that were given the task, and that's what the quarantine police are doing, right? There are all over. You know, I made mention in last week's Friday email that I had heard that some people had to be dispersed from Ralph Field who had gathered there involving some shul people. I didn't mention anybody's name. And then I got an email, and the police had to come, right? And I got an email from somebody who felt insulted, or at least judged by what I had said. And I didn't even know, I didn't know what his name. That's just someone had reported to me, and they said that's not what actually happened. They were gathered just as families and weren't mixing it all. And the police came to say, and first he said, I hate having to do this, but Ralph Field is school property, and school properties are all officially closed, so I have to ask you to get off the field. So they're out, but it's and somebody had said to me that as the policeman was getting out of his car, he muttered under his breath, 30 years in the force, and this is the most distasteful, awful thing I have to do right now. Because people were actually not doing anything wrong, right? But he had to police the observance of the quarantine. So in this case, there were people policing the observance of Shabbos. Now, let's just do this Ibn Ezra, and then we're going to have to probably call it, because we have to shift over to the Yom HaShoah program. Here is the Ibn Ezra's explanation of why this text is here. Who wants to read for me the highlighted area of the Ibn Ezra?
Wait a minute.
Hedda, can you see it?
Yeah, wait.
Okay, you see it?
Yeah, I just have to swallow. I'm eating dinner. And I have already recalled why this is linked here. Is it also possible that they, I don't know, they did it in open defiance and they warned him and it didn't help? Wait a minute, tell me what that word means again.
That's this guy. That's the person who is.
Oh, that was the thing. Oh.
That's the word. The Mikoshesh Eitzim, the one who's doing this, right? So he said, "Look, this is something which is being done in open defiance." Now, maybe so finding him doesn't mean that they found him necessarily sneaking, but they were out on their patrol, and there he was, right? There he was, chutzpah, doing this. And he uses the word on purpose, the Ibn Ezra. Asa, here's the Hebrew, Asa biyad ramah. He did it, yad ramah. That means high-handedly, literally, high-handedly. In this case, we need to just look back to the Chumash text, and then we're going to call it a night here. Willa, we can see you. It's great. Okay, chapter 15. Let's go. So remember, we were talking. So we meet this story in verse 32. They were in the wilderness of the mountain, found right. Here's the last few lines just before this. V'hanefesh asher ta'aseh biyad ramah, and a soul, a person who transgresses, right, a sin, biyad ramah, in high-handedly, in defiance, min ha'azrach, min ha'ger, whether he's a citizen of Israel or a stranger, et Adonai hu megadev. This person is reviling God because he is sticking in his eye, as it were. That soul should be cut off from his people. Because he disparaged and spurned the word of God. Openly, clearly saying, to hell with everything, I'm doing it anyway. And he is completely ripped up his mitzvot. This person should be cut off. His sin is with him. So says the Ibn Ezra, the Torah then took a story of an event that happened earlier, a year and a half earlier, or at least a year earlier, right? And tells you it, because here's an example of someone who does not accidental sin, not someone who is even weak, but here you have a person they find out gathering, and then the Torah described, and they brought him the one who was Mekoshesh Eitzim, and that means that and they understood to mean even though they warned him, please stop doing this on the Sabbath. This is a transgression that's punishable by death. And his response, and this is how you get the high-handed, as the Midrash one reads it, his response is, I know, and I'm doing it anyway. That's the only person you can put to death for transgressing Shabbos. If a person transgresses Shabbos and someone says, don't do that, this is a terrible sin and it's punishable by death, and the person says, I hear you and I don't care. So that's what this person is, and that's why this story is here. That's how.
Question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the commandments is, thou shalt not kill. Yep. So how come the people stoned him? Why didn't God kill him? So therefore, it wouldn't be the people that are going against the Ten Commandments.
So do not murder is not the same as do not put to death, and putting to death is not murder. It is still taking life, but it might not. It's not the Torah's prohibition against.
It's more like an execution.
It's an execution, correct. And everyone is executioner. It's like an Agatha Christie novel here, right? So that's, we're going to leave you on the cliffhanger. That's the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra Midrash, which read this story as being an early story that slept in over here for some purpose to teach you something about the importance of Shabbos and the like. And the Midbar reference is when they first enter the Midbar. Next week, we'll look at the other read, which is, no. This is about here and now, and try to unpack it. Okay, everyone? It's wonderful to look on this. A lot of you here with us. It's fantastic. We look forward to next week's learning. Meantime, you should head over to the other email link to participate in the Yom HaShoah program. Take care, everyone. Laila Tov.
Bye.
Laila Tov.
Goodbye, guys.